The election of 2000 between Mr. Bush and former Democratic Vice President Al Gore became known as one of the most controversial elections in history. The state of Florida fell under chaos due to the required manual recount of voter ballots. Uncertainty filled the country. Finally, on January 20th, 2001, Bush was declared President of the United States. Nevertheless, it is notable to acknowledge that Bush did not win the popular vote. He won the Electoral College, meaning that a majority did not exactly want Bush to be
President
titled
Bush,
the 43rd
along with my
president of the
administration, proposed that we cut taxes by a decent amount. The surplus of tax money is owed to the American people and should be returned to them in a form of tax cuts.
The tax cut. Bush insisted that the surplus was funds owed to the American people and should be returned to them in the form of tax cuts. What would be your reaction to this idea?
I think it's a good idea for the American people. I don't know, paying taxes sucks, I guess. But at the same time, it sucks, yeah. But at the same time, the government, it probably really sucks for the government because their deficit isn't being paid off by us, so
we're taking this break. However, it should be okay to maybe wait on it a little more. Taxes do suck, so I get where he's coming from.
People want these tax cuts to be more permanent, while, like I said, the government wants these to be artificial, or they will end soon. So that there's that fight right now, either going with the people or going with what the government wants. So that's hard, I guess.
So this tax cut would include a reduction in income taxes, the omission of the marriage penalty, an end to the estate tax, and an increase in the child tax credit.
That's a positive.
I think it's for the marriage license.
For the marriage license, yes. And the child credit, I think
awesome.
It's beneficial. I mean, you'd have the family that has one child and then, the 19 kids and counting family, which is...
It's time to come together to get it done so that we can truthfully say in America, no child will be left behind. Not one single child.
The president's nearly $48 billion education plan includes testing children annually to more closely monitor reading and math skills, rewarding schools where grades improve, and punishing failing schools by cutting federal money to districts that don't show progress, and allowing parents of children in public schools that fail 3 years in a row to use tax dollars, government vouchers, to move their children to private schools.
Okay, if they're failing 3 years in a row, supposedly, I think they need to do something different. If one thing doesn't work, okay, how about we move away from that, change what we're doing, and how about if there's supposed to be improvement if we change.
Right.
So they wanted to decrease the education gap. However, it seems like it's just disguising it.
Yeah, I agree, totally. Right, they're just not solving the problem, and they're beating around the bush. And by putting these kids into different schools, but those children are actually the problem because they don't know how to take these tests that are required.
Yeah, it's not the children's problem.
No, it's not the children's fault.
The system, I guess.
Yeah, but it's us trying to make them to take these tests and be successful when it's clearly not working for them. So
Nicely said.
thanks, dude.
Are you okay?
No!
Does your insurance cover you?
No!
What about Medicare Part D?
No, I don't have the money. It's $5,000 initially and I don't have the money. I'm too poor.
Poor lady. That was sad.
Poor Jimmy, and didn't get him the...
Jimmy not being there for his mom.
It was her grandma.
No, it was his mom.
Well, I find it interesting that the Medicare Act didn't cover her until she paid
$5,000.
$5,000.
That's not cool.
It also says, the big accomplishment for the president was that it would help get these drugs, have it be available to senior citizens. But however, there's only certain drugs that do get covered with Medicare Part D.
They only cover generic drugs, not really the brand name drugs. So I would think that the companies with these big brand names would be a little angry about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the intention's good, but
Now, after showing you some of the highlights throughout Bush's presidency,
Look at that.
we should move on to September 11th, 2001, one of the most startling events that was ever to happen in the history of America. This event was something that made Bush, as a president, one of the most unforgettable men to ever lead this country.
Thank you all. I want you all to know, you can't go any louder. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you! I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Yeah, like putting yourself in their shoes, being in the situation in the building is one whole other thing. Just imagine being him. Like, you're the leader of the country, you get the news that this happened in your country, and it's a letdown, and what do you do? Like, at that point, how do you know how to react to that? And he just handles it and goes with it, and he acts like he's there with them. He's not just being a president, he's being a human being in the situation.
There are always going to be those people who'll say it, so I'll say it. Couldn't this have been potentially prevented?
I think it was just one of those things. I'm sure there's somehow, some way it could have been prevented, but then again, it's crazy how it happens. I mean, it's like when you go anywhere on a plane, you're constantly looking around, and you're like,
Right.
is this gonna happen? Like, throughout the whole plane ride, you're going, is something gonna happen to me now?
I remember they showing him reading to this class of 6th graders, and I mean, you could see his emotion in his face. He was completely shocked by it. However, he continued on. He showed
Strength.
strength.
People judge him for it, and they say, why did you wait? It's like, you can't just not.
You have to
and you can tell
accept.
how he reacted just from his face, like you said. You can tell how he felt about it, and then he left minutes after and then went and dealt with it. And you can't freak a classroom of 6th graders out and be like...
Right.
So far, after his presidency, nothing's happened, so obviously something's working now.
It was a major turning point in his presidency, so...
In history. Just
In history
overall.
as well. But his approval ratings, like, went
Was
through
it-
the roof.
Because they said when he first came into office, his approval ratings were only 47% because he didn't have the majority when he went into office. And they said after 9/11, he was up, I think he was close to 89%.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And he stayed at that rate for a whole year, but I think he probably handled it the best he could have out of anyone.
I agree.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was a fun extra credit video for AP.
Yeah, no kidding.
There's a lot of information though. It was good though. I'm glad we won.
Many of the pros of Bush's administration were there was no successful terrorist attack after the attacks of 9/11.
Yeah, that's awesome because everyone talked about it afterwards. They're like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine something happening again, and luckily it hasn't yet.
That's
So
true.
That's good.
And President Bush was the 4th Republican president in American history to serve for 2 full terms.
Really? That's crazy. I didn't catch that in the video. My bad.
His administration also gave some of the biggest tax cuts in history.
Sorry, I had to stop tying my shoe. Alright, anyway, what were we
Did
talking?
you know that Bush raised $36.3 million in campaign funds in 4 months?
What?
And that became a record.
That's insane. I've never heard of anyone.
Yeah.
How much is that a month? What is that? That's $9 million a month. That's ridiculous.
He also killed Clinton's plan of OSHA ergonomic rules as well.
Oh, I remember hearing about that actually. On the news, it was a big thing.
Bush started an executive branch, and he elected women like Condoleezza Rice as Secretary of State, along with other minorities.
Alright, some things I learned from the video was that he captured Saddam Hussein on December 13th, 2003, and one of his favorite quotes was, now former dictator of Iraq is finally getting the justice he denied millions.
Nice.
I know, I
Like
tried.
it.
Anyway, alright, so he passed the No Child Left Behind Act, which was 2001, which helped with schooling and made sure that people were equal and whatnot, and had the schooling rates, and now there's testing that you have to make sure you're caught up with and whatnot. And then he passed Medicare Part D Act, which was in 2003, and it turned out this was to be that 15-minute vote, and it turned into 3 hours.
Yep.
So clumsy. Okay, anyway, back to what we were talking about. Okay, so Medicare Part D, it was a 15-minute ruling, which shouldn't have even been 15 minutes, and it turned into a 3-hour conversation,
Yep.
which was ridiculous. And then he appointed the 2 Supreme Court justices, John Roberts and Sam Alito.
Okay.
And they happen to be some of the biggest justices still to this day, and they were 2 of the youngest that went in, so they'll be here for years upon everyone else. Another thing, the AIDS relief, or PEPFAR as it's called, that was in 2003 as well with everything else, and it helped combat the global AIDS epidemic that was going on. Ended up saving 1,000 lives in Africa.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
1,000 lives in Africa, and then overall across the countries that got funded, it dropped the rate 10% overall of AIDS.
Wow.
Which I know 10% is not a lot. So, what else did I have on here? Oh, on September 14th, after 9/11 happened, Bush had that bullhorn speech. Remember we seen that?
Yes.
For the video. And he was talking about, he was like talking to firefighters and police and just giving his condolences and saying, "We're a country. We're gonna build up from this. This is not the end.
Stay together."
It's the beginning." Yeah, it's a new beginning. And then, oh, this is my favorite part. I haven't even talked to you about that yet. Okay, on November 27th, he showed up in Baghdad, surprised everyone there, and spent Thanksgiving with all the troops. The thing I really liked was how he passed the wildlife preservation, which was 195,280 square miles that they preserved the wildlife out on this island. So there's a lot of pollution going on, but Bush decided to spend that, which is really shocking to a lot of people, because usually Republicans are not, yeah, they're not huge into doing any like that kind of stuff. Alright, now what were some of the cons of the video? I mean, I paid more attention, but I think I was more focused on like the pros of him. So what did you have for your cons?
Well, I had many of the cons. Of course, the Great Recession that
Okay.
started in 2008.
Uh-huh.
And this was caused mostly because of the bust of the housing market. And people ended up paying more for their mortgages than their house was actually worth. And this was because of many of the false front prices.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there too, there was like the false interest rates, which happened? Okay. I seen that because then I had on here that 06 interest rates went, what was it? They went up and then the housing completely dropped, which is opposite of when it started. So it was just like, everyone was like, what is going on? Which caused a lot of people to lose their houses and whatnot. And it was just a bad deal. But anyway,
That's
okay.
true.
Well, one of the negatives I have written down was that he cut Pell loans for the poor in like schooling and stuff, which is kind of weird because he was into all the education stuff, and then he cut Pell loans, which left all the college kids with more debt and whatnot. And then that he led the, what was it, the nation into Iraq on intelligence reports that weren't even true. Like
Yes.
he led them into it, got there, and then he was just kind of like
Convinced
those
it's
weren't
false.
even real. But yeah. Lastly, what was it? Oh, the global isolationism. So he withdrew from, it started in 1972 as the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, and it was a Russian protest, and he ended up like getting out of it. And it's been a thing since 1972. Said, no, we don't need it anymore. Everyone's like, are you serious? I'd be going crazy. And lastly, he was launched a war on CIA whistleblowers, which is something that's never been done too. So I was just kind of, I think everyone was shocked when they seen that happen. But you have any more cons?
Yeah, I took some notes on how Bush had a really slow response to Hurricane Katrina and all of his victims. I thought that was a major part.
Okay. Any lessons?
Well, and the attempt to invade and overthrow the Taliban and kill Osama bin Laden.
Ooh, yeah.
And he wasn't captured though until over a decade later. So there was that.
What time is it? Oh, it's 4 o'clock. We should probably get going. But make sure you stay for the test tomorrow, okay?
for sure. See you.
All right. Have a good night.